you're all doing okay. My name is Usman Asim. I'm one of the DevRel engineers at Alchemy, and I am super duper excited today because we have an awesome dev tutorial lined up for you. And if you can judge by my screen, we're going to be delving into one of the hottest new chains that has just launched their testnet, Monad. And we're not just going to be delving into Monad from a development perspective, but we're also going to be deploying one of the most interesting new feature sets on the Ethereum virtual machine on top of Monad and kind of interacting with it. What is that feature set, you may ask? We're going to be exploring EIP 7702 enabled smart accounts on top of the Monad testnet. Now, this is really exciting because, today there's a lot of new chains that are launching every day, be it layer 2s, new layer 1s, and many of them are actually focused on the EVM. And one of the cool ones that's been gaining a lot of traction as of late is Monad. And Monad is this new layer 1 that has focused on the EVM and really rewriting the EVM for first principles, where they've taken out a lot of the base issues that may have been with the EVM previously, really been focusing on performance at the layer 1 level. This includes things like including a brand new database that is higher powered and focused on allowing state to be managed much more efficiently. You also have things like a custom consensus mechanism that acts in a much faster way than the traditional EM consensus mechanism that was on the ETH L1 base layer. And what that's resulted in is actually a very powerful ecosystem of transactions that are taking place on Testnet. So if you look at this Explorer, that is super awesome. You're actually seeing that Monad is running a fully distributed system on top of, I believe it's 50 plus nodes, and seeing less than 700 milliseconds of block time on top of that distributed system, which is really remarkable because if you are familiar with the space and you're familiar with layer 1s and all the different networks out there, many of them boast fast block times, but very rarely do you see them doing so on a distributed system. And to see Monad doing this on Testnet, on top of the distributed system that's globally distributed, it's actually really exciting. So with all the traction that we've been seeing on Monad from Alchemy's perspective, we've been getting a lot of requests, and a lot of folks are talking about utilizing consumer-facing applications on top of Monad, and they've been asking us a lot of questions on how they can do so. And for today's dev tutorial, we're going to be focusing on how developers can actually utilize EIP 7702 and smart accounts on top of the Monad testnet so that they can build applications with consumer focus and do so super smoothly. So you might be wondering, what is EIP 7702? Why is it so interesting? And what does it have to do with consumer-facing applications? So when we talk about EIP 7702, we're talking about the major upgrade that is coming to the Ethereum Pectra hard fork, which, by the way, is already live on Sepolia. And what this does is it allows those EOA accounts or externally owned accounts to use smart contract account features, right? So previously we had two different types of wallet accounts. One was the EOA account, and then we had the smart contract accounts. And these EOA accounts could not access the features that smart account wallets could. And so today with EIP 7702, you're actually enabling these EIP 7702 accounts to have the features of smart accounts. And that's actually really powerful. And so a lot of folks, they kind of say, oh, is EIP 7702 going to replace ERC 4337, but no, it's actually an extension of ERC 4337, and it's actually going to be super complementary, and it's going to make account abstraction that much more easy for developers to utilize and actually build in production level environments. So if you want to look at some of the key feature sets that are provided by EIP 7702, you can look right here. Things like delegation control, things like enabling smart account features without having to create a new, address and transfer all your assets to the smart wallet. And for users, this is going to feel very similar to Web 2 type applications. And then for us as developers, we've been waiting for tools like this for a long time so that our users that we're building for can actually have a really cool experience building. So super excited to kind of play around with the Monad testnet today and deploy some EIP 7702 enabled smart accounts on top of the Monad testnet so that devs on top of Monad can build those consumer-facing applications in a really powerful and efficient way. So let's jump right into this. To get started, I just want to kind of showcase this Monad's awesome developer portal. Shout out to the team because this design is awesome. It looks sick. And if you come down here, if you're a new developer in the Monad ecosystem, you can kind of just go ahead and paste your wallet address and get access to testnet Monad tokens. And if you know about building on testnets, faucets, and getting testnet tokens on any network nowadays is actually really tough. So the fact that Monad has allowed this and enabled this right for developer portal is super cool. And so we're going to go ahead and jump right in. So you might be wondering, how am I going to deploy this EIP 7702 enabled smart account on top of this new blockchain? Like, that must be super hard. It must be like a lot of code. I need to use like 10 different AI tools to get this done. And while AI is going to make this a lot easier if you choose to use it, the process should be pretty simple already. So the cool thing is we have something called the Account Kit, which is this awesome account abstraction SDK that utilizes all these different tools, making it super easy for users to actually get onboarding right and easy for the users using things like Web2 authentication, but then also allowing things like gas sponsorship and invisible signing so that the actual user experience of using these applications is that much easier. So Account Kit is this awesome SDK, and it's going to make it super easy for us to just out of the box utilize EIP 7702 on top of any chain that we really want to. And for today, we're going to be using Monad, of course. So to get really in the weeds here, we're going to just go ahead and start with the quick start button. And if you see here, there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of tackle this. If you already have an existing project that you want to integrate Account Kit into, there's a whole slew of options to be able to do that, and that's actually very easy. But today we're just going to kind of start fresh, right? We're going to showcase folks that you can just build from scratch from day one and utilize EIP 7702 in a very fresh way. So we're going to go ahead and just see here that if you want to start a new Next.js project, you actually have the option to either install via Yarn or install via Node. And so today we're just going to go ahead and use Yarn and copy that over. We'll come over to our console and get started here, really. So I'm in my temporary repositories directory. We're going to go ahead and just paste in this Yarn quick start. And I'm just going to go ahead and change the name here just so that we know that we're using Monad. So I'm just going to go ahead and call this Account Kit Monad and then go ahead and get this installed. Okay, let's see here. Oh well, looks like I already have a Create Next app with the Monad stuff integrated here. So let's go ahead and just call this a different name. Let's Account Kit Monad. We'll call this Test. So as you can see, we're going to go ahead and install all the different dependencies that are required to run Account Kit. And so while this is installing, we'll just go ahead and kind of go over all the different feature sets that you're going to need to get started here. So as you can see, the Account Kit documentation is pretty thorough. It's going to showcase to you a lot of the ways that you can actually showcase this. And if you see, it's really only 3 steps, right? Once you get past all these different configs and grabbing over your keys, it's really simple to get started. So let's go ahead and just show that in action. So you can see over here, we're over here and done, meaning that we've initialized our repository. Let's just go ahead and direct ourselves into it. So once we are here, I'm going to go ahead and open up my IDE, and we're just going to go ahead and check this out, right? And so as you can see, we got this awesome little SDK. We just installed it. It's got all these different configs ready to go right out the box. We're just going to go ahead and make sure that we npm install in here so that all of our dependencies are ready to go. And of course, we're going to go ahead and get an error, and that's most likely just because we are having things like React 19 installed instead of having like, a full-fledged, I think Account Kit is supporting a React 18 as the max version of React. So we're just going to go ahead and install legacy pure depths so that obviously all the dependencies act in the way that we want them to. So I'll just go ahead and full screen this so we can see it much better and let this do its magic. So while it's go ahead and installing right there, let's just go ahead and showcase to you what does these files actually look like. And so really, if you remember from our Account Kit demo, so just to showcase to you, we actually have this awesome website that showcases this thing called demo.alchemy.com, where it actually showcases smart wallets and Account Kit in action without you even having to go ahead and deploy it anywhere. So if you go to demo.alchemy.com, you can actually see what the end result of what we're going to be building today looks like. You can kind of choose what different authentication methods you want. You can add things like passkeys, add even connections to external wallets. And then really when you want to get into the configuration weed, you can see that there's things like smart accounts, things like smart EOA accounts. And today we're going to be focused on the EIP enabled smart EOA. You can choose what theme you want, of course. And then, the customization really, it's whatever you want it to look like, and you can even add your own logo and things of that nature. And if you really want to get into the weeds, there's full customizable styling where you can go deep into it and actually customize this however you'd like. And so you can see that when we have built our little config here, we can actually go to the code preview and see what exactly it is that we need to export styling wise and even components wise into our actual config file, so that we are able to actually enable this in an application. And so since we just downloaded the quick start, most of this is already ready to go. And for the sake of today's tutorial, we're going to go ahead and make sure that we just have all the different configurations that we'd like. So as you can see so far, we have things like Google, we have things like Facebook. And one thing that I want to point out here is that in order to get this started, as you can see, right now, the chain that it's using is Sepolia. There's no Alchemy API key here. So what are these things? Why do you need them? And like, how do we actually get this to work in the way that we want it to? So right off the bat, you can see that we need some from an API key to be able to get this started, and it actually tells you where exactly to go to get that. You can see that the chain currently is on Sepolia. So it's as easy as this. We're using something called VM, which is like the default chain config where we can get all the different chains here. And so we're just going to go ahead and get monad testnet to be our main chain that we're going to be using today. And so when we actually want to authenticate this, when we actually want to make sure that it's using the right chain, we actually have to go to the dashboard for Alchemy to be able to utilize and grab an API key to make this all work. So if I go back over here and showcase to you my dashboard, already got some apps running here. You can really go ahead and come here, create a new application, and get that API key from there, or you can run it from an existing application. As you can see, I already have one Monad application running, and I have my API key available here. And don't worry, I'm gonna close it off when I post this video so that these API keys aren't able to be used by other folks. So don't worry about that. But just to showcase you how that looks. So for the sake of today's tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new application just to show you what that flow looks like. But when we come back, we're going to go ahead and pull the existing API key that we already have running. So let's go ahead and call this the demo application. We'll go ahead and describe it to be the Monad EIP 7702 app. And then, whatever our use case for this is. And for today, we're just going to go ahead and call it in-front tooling. So go ahead and click next there. And then it's going to go ahead and actually ask me what chain do we want to run this on. And if you really wanted to, you can actually enable this on every single EVM chain. That feature is actually super awesome because, for most of us, we're building on different chains. We're multi-chain developers. But for the sake of today's tutorial, we're just going to go ahead and deploy on top of Monad. And so as you can see, once you click Monad, you will actually see all the different APIs and services that are available that Alchemy offers on top of Monad. Many different APIs, many different services. But for today, we'll enable all the basic ones: webhooks, subgraphs, transfer API, node API. But then we'll also go over here and enable Account Kit and Gas Manager and user op simulation, just for the sake, and the bundler API, just so we have all the different feature sets that we really want enabled. So we'll go ahead and create our app. And as you can see, it's easy as that. We just created this brand new application with a fresh API key that we can go ahead and pull and deposit into our new Leaf function application. But like I mentioned, for the sake of this, we already got one cool running. And we're going to copy that here and then paste. That's how easy it is. But we're not done yet, right? So if you can see that we went ahead and added our API key, we've enabled the chain, but one thing that I did mention at the earlier start of this discussion was that we're going to be able to allow folks to have their gas managed for them, right? And so how do we go ahead and do that? So the cool thing about EIP 7702 and ERC 4327 is that it allows for this thing called paymasters, where users are able to actually have their gas sponsored for them, so that from a user perspective, when I'm clicking these buttons, I don't have to click sign transaction every time, or I don't have to have a fully funded wallet. I can actually just go ahead and use from the developer, if they've enabled paymasters or things like that. For me, I don't have to worry about it as a user. So that's exactly what we're going to do and showcase you how to do that. As you can see, I already have some active policies there. But what is a policy? It's essentially just a way to, showcase like what is the actual gas sponsorship levels that you want. How do you want to do this? Do you want to have limits and things like that so that users don't break your application? So for this, we're just going to call it monad test demo for our test monad app. You can select which network you want it on. Of course, we just want it for monad testnet, and then the policy type is sponsorship. So we'll just click next. And then you can really, you can really customize this to your ability if you really want to, set some limits so that folks, they can't break your application or can't spam you. You can do that. But for today, we'll just go ahead and set no limits because, no limits for the win. And yeah, we don't need to set any custom rules for today. And so we'll go ahead and click next. And as you can see, there's also even things like access control. So if you really want to allow lists or blacklist so that specific addresses that you don't want or to specific folks that you don't want to interact with the application can't, things like KYC, AML, OFAC, you can go ahead and implement that. But for today, obviously, we're just going to let this be a free range application. You can also showcase when you want this to expire and how long you want this policy to be live for. So maybe, you're running a campaign and maybe it's like 10 days or a week or an hour, whatever the case is, where you're sponsoring gas for folks. You can set those limits. For today, we'll just run no limit, right? And so you can kind of see the details of your policy and then go ahead and get it started. And as you can see, we now have a newly active policy. We have our policy ID and things of that nature. But again, we'll just go ahead and use our existing policy ID that we have related here. You just go ahead and copy that policy ID, come down here, and then just create a new little component here for policy. And then there you go. And so as you can see now, we really have this. That's all it really takes to set this config up and get started. So from a perspective of actually getting this started and seeing what this looks like, right, I actually went ahead and pre-built a little bit of this this exact test ready to go for us with monad enabled so that we don't have to sit through any sort of errors, but exactly that same flow where we went ahead and enabled things. Actually, what I did, one thing extra that I missed over here was I just, from a user perspective, if you really want, for me, I want to showcase to my users that when they log in, that they're logging in with their address, despite whatever login method that they're using. As you can see here, that the user would see their email. So for today, we'll just go ahead and write address instead, so that users can actually see that, hey, like I did log in with my email, but that associated some address with that, instead of just showcasing logged in with my email and not knowing what address that's associated with. But for some use cases, users actually might not want to showcase what address it is, right? If it's a application that is really trying to mimic Web 2, you really don't want to showcase to your users that, hey, I have smart account, or you don't want to showcase that you have a traditional Web 2 account infrastructure enabled on there. So for the sake of today's application, since we're all developers here and we just really want to see how this thing works, we're going to go ahead and showcase an address to our users. So as you can see here, we already have that environment set up for us, and I'm just going to go ahead and showcase to you in the most basic way possible. So we're just going to go ahead and do npm run dev, and as you can see, it's going to go ahead and start up in our local host. We'll go ahead and see what this looks like. And this is going to be the most basic implementation of this. It's just going to showcase to you what this is meant to look like in the most basic way. As you can see, it's just a very, very simple login button. Imagine if this was some amazing, beautiful application, right? Which we had just a very simple login button, right? We're so used to Connect Wallet, but this is just plain login, vanilla. And as you can see, boom, we have all these different login options where we can either continue with an existing wallet that we have, we can sign in with Google, we can sign in with passkeys. But for today, we're going to go ahead and do the vanilla email route, because who doesn't have an email, right? So I'll just go ahead and plug in my Alchemy email there. As you can see, it sent me some verification code, and just to showcase that here, we're going to go ahead and wait. And as you can see, I got this new 6-digit code. Go ahead and paste that in there, and boom, there we go. We just logged into this application with our email, and what that did was it actually showcased to us what address we logged in with. And then this error, you can ignore it. It's just actually some front end error that I have because I don't have the right dependency for Next.js. But if you really look at this, this is exactly what it is, right? We logged in with our email, and now we have this smart account address that's associated with this email. And we did this all on the monad testnet. As you can see in our config file, we have the monad EVM enabled in there with the testnet RPC links and things of that nature. And so the way that we can even see that this happened on the monad network and that did our user operations actually even take place is if you look here on our application on the Alchemy dashboard, you can actually see that we had a spike at the time that we were running this application. So you can see that there was a couple different user operations that were all successful, by the way, with 100% success rate that just took place. So we just logged in, and it kind of just showcased that we ran some requests. You can see that there were some HTTP request counts, and then that there was also some HTTP requests over here. So you can see exactly what methods those were and at what time they were run as well. So super cool to see that we just literally logged in to a fresh application that we just built using EIP 7702, and you can see that on Monad that was actually running some user operations. So I'm going to take it one step further, right? We just showcased you how you can integrate that into your application. Super easy, was literally a very easy tutorial in terms of how actually that looks like, but I'm assuming most developers are not going to have a blank screen with just a login button, right? So for folks that are going to be implementing this type of technology, these type of smart accounts into real world applications where users are going to be interfacing, I want to show you a little bit of a cooler example. So I went ahead and built this really, funny application using AI, using VO, just to showcase to you like what it looks like in a real production type of environment, whether this is a production or not, for folks to kind of just see what this would look like. So I just built this little thing called Monad Guestbook, kind of like a message signing board where folks can go ahead and sign messages on top of the Monad blockchain. And, if you're building a true application on top of Monad, you know that you're going to have to deploy some smart contract associated with this. I went ahead and deployed a smart contract here called Message Board. Very simple smart contract, just kind of showcasing message posting, how to actually post those applications, where are they stored, as well as getting the messages and getting the count of different messages. So I've already deployed this, but just for the sake of showcasing this to you, we'll go ahead and compile it. You can go ahead and come over here to your environment, go to your injected provider, which we've already connected to our Monad MetaMask account, and then we'll just go ahead and deploy this on top of the Monad blockchain. So you can see that we're on Monad Testnet. We're just going to go ahead and deploy the smart contract very simply. You can see here, block hash was successful, and then we got our new contract address, right? So what I did was already deployed a smart contract very similar to this and took the ABI, right? We wanted to get the contract interface, have ourselves be able to interact with it on the front end. So that's exactly what we did here. But more importantly, what's really important is that we actually connected EIP 7702 smart accounts as our login method on here. So if you click our connect wallet button, you can see, whoa, we got this awesome little Web 2 style login authentication method where we can log in. And so we're going to go ahead and go ahead with email again. Let's go ahead and go back here, and you can see we got our new code. Go ahead and take it back to the application, log in, and boom, there you go. So you can go ahead and see that we just launched this awesome smart account and connected it to this new application, right? And so this is exactly what we want to see for users who are using this application. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to have a third-party wallet. They actually just got this awesome EIP-enabled 7702 smart account associated with this, so they didn't have to do this. And you can see kind of what the address is. You can see obviously there's a little bit more information that we want to give away here, but obviously none of this will be in production when the time comes. But you can see that it's a smart account that was deployed, and then you can kind of go ahead and leave your mark on there, and you can notice that it's going to be a gasless transaction when it actually happens, because we've enabled this gasless transaction policy. And just to make sure that this is working, make sure this isn't just on the front end and not actually happening on the back end. If you go ahead and see this, we actually ran some new user operations when we signed in here on our dashboard. So you can go ahead and see that, hey, we actually just made some more requests to the blockchain on top of the Monad network. And so that's really exactly how easy it is, folks, where you can go ahead and enable EIP 7702 smart accounts on top of any application that you want, on any blockchain that you want. And we just did it on one of the fastest new blockchains that are out there. So super, super excited for folks who are building in the Monad ecosystem to get access to EIP 7702. If you have any questions about EIP 7702, feel free to hit me up. Feel free to hit any of the DevRels up on the Alchemy DevRel team. We are here to help. We are super excited about the Monad ecosystem, and we're super excited to push EIP 7702 forward for all EVM enabled chains, because we are big believers in smart accounts, smart wallets, and everything going forward in that regard. If you're a builder in the ecosystem, stay tuned. We got a bunch more developer tutorials coming, but this has been deploying EIP 7702 smart accounts on top of the Monad testnet, and I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Super awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed this. See you next time.